Hey, it's Lemon. Welcome to the Backlogs. Hope you're doing well. Today, we're gonna knock out another weapon type from Dark Souls 1. A weapon that most of you have probably used, at least briefly, in your playthroughs. The curved swords. Now, if you're like me, you probably think there's quite a few of them, and that we're in for a marathon of a weapon showcase. But it turns out, the category that has the most weapons is the curved sword's cousin, the straight sword. Unless you count things like sorcery, miracles, pyromancies, and shields, which, we do. Whew, boy, I've got my work cut out for me. But when you climb a mountain, you don't stare at the top. You just take it one step at a time. So today, let's talk about curved swords. So, curved swords. First things first, Dark Souls has done us the kindness of giving us a class that starts with a curved sword, the Wanderer, who starts with our first weapon, the Scimitar. It's not very strong, with only 80 base attack, but it does have decent dexterity scaling, helping beef that number up. Combine that with the fact that it's pretty light and has good durability, and you've got a decent starter weapon. As far as attacks go, we've got some basic side swipes for one-handed light attacks, some fancy spinning attacks that combo nicely for one-handed strong attacks, even faster side swipes when you two-hand light attack, and a different spinning combo when you two-hand your strong attack. Looks fancy, but it's very stamina hungry. The rolling attack is a basic swipe, nothing too crazy there, while the backstep is a rush forward with a very tight vertical slice. Great for making sure you don't bounce off of nearby walls. And now for the weird one, the kick attack. Unlike most other weapons, the curved sword kick is actually a distancing attack move, which is great for creating some distance after attacking, but not so good for knocking an enemy's shield away, which means shield enemies will require some additional techniques or a different curved sword, but we'll talk about that one later. But if you're not super excited about the Scimitar, I have good news. There's another curved sword nearby, sort of, and it's a slightly better version of the one we own. If you're a masochist and willing to take the risk of heading through Blighttown's back entrance, and let's be honest, you're watching a Backlogs video, so we already know the answer to that one, you can go through Blighttown in reverse to get your next weapon. Also, fun fact, the Wanderer's armor set has enough poison resistance to fend off a single sniper dart. So you get one whole mistake before your character dies from poo brain. And considering the next weapon is hidden behind said sniper, you'll probably need that bit of wiggle room. Unless you're a capital G gamer like I am, the trick is to harbor a raging quiet violence in your heart. Works every time. And with the Blowdart sniper sent back to the depths of hell from whence he came, we can get a new armor set and, more importantly, the falchion. Oh, pro tip, if you're already in Blighttown in the early game for some reason, grab all the loose souls around the swamp. They're worth about 10 grand, which can give you upwards of 10 levels for free, which is great for evening out your build, or, in my case, building glass cannons. So, the falchion. It's exactly the same as the Scimitar. No, really, it has the exact same moveset, the same animation speeds, and the same stamina costs. But if that's the case, why did we go to Blighttown to get it? I don't know, actually. I mean, it's got 82 damage instead of 80, but it's an extra pound heavier to balance for that fact. Even the scaling is the same, albeit slightly better due to the marginal increase in base damage. So yeah, maybe don't go to Blighttown to get the falchion. I like the look of it more than the Scimitar, so there's that. But if you're not confident in your ability to traverse the swamp backwards this early in the game, there are far easier ways to get another curved sword. For example, if you farm the skeletons in the graveyard next door, the sword skeletons actually have a chance to drop a falchion, while the shield skeletons have a chance to drop a Scimitar. Or if you rightly decide that that's the worst idea you've ever heard, you can just head into the Undead Burg and buy another Scimitar from the Undead Merchant. Much easier than every other option. But why would you want two curved swords? Simple. Because it's cool. I mean, look at that left-hand moveset. Tell me you don't feel awesome with that light attack. And if that's not enough to convince you, perhaps this overly stylish parry will. Oh my, yes, I'll take two. Also worth noting, I think the falchion has slightly longer reach than the Scimitar. I can't confirm that with numbers, but it certainly feels that way. So maybe if I say that confidently enough, someone will type that into the wiki as if it were a fact. Nah, that's silly. That never happens. Anyway, after flexing on the Black Knight a bit and completely ruining his day, I do the exact same thing to Havel so that I can steal his ring and never worry about mid-rolling again, go completely hams on the Taurus Demon's Gams, pump dexterity because I've given up on pretending that I even know what vitality and endurance do, then clown on some more Black Knights. You call that a golf swing? Please, I've seen grandmothers with better form. I parry the pig, because I love seeing how many people in the comments don't know you can do that, hack my way through the local Dregling convention, then test out my falchion against the gargoyles. It's a bit embarrassing if I'm being honest. Don't get me wrong, I've got almost 40 dexterity and a +5 weapon, but still, I wasn't expecting this level of devastation. It's the move speed. With the damage now being respectable, being able to attack several times in a few seconds really adds up. Hell, we could have one-cycled the Moonlight Butterfly if I had added a resin. That's how you know you've got something good going on. From this point on, we're basically just going to play the game normally for a while. As I briefly mentioned earlier in the video, there's really not that many curved swords, and the rest of them are either really annoying to get or in the second half of the game. So, with that said, let's hit the highlights. Gain the ability to make plus 10 weapons, use and abuse the Gaping Dragon, dream of what kind of damage output we might have had if I had the foresight to bring some gold pine resin, realize I'm one step away from accidentally dousing a Firelink Shrine and go back to make sure Lautrec knows who's boss, accept his fealty by stealing his ring and his life, then slowly but surely make my way through the rest of the bosses in the first half of the game. You know, these kind of runs are always a mixed bag for me emotionally. They're fun to do, because you have to learn the ins and outs of one or two weapons, since that's all you have access to in the early game, but they're also kind of boring because you've, only got one or two weapons to play around with. I'm not actually complaining or anything. I'm no stranger to playing through a game with a single weapon, and you find some really cool hidden gems when you do that kind of run. I guess I just wish the developers of Dark Souls spread their weapons out a bit better when they placed them all over the world. But they got better at that in the later games, so it's all good, right? Hello? Also, for those of you who have literally never seen Ceaseless Discharge fought normally, this is what you've been missing. I know, riveting gameplay. If you were ever wondering why no one really cares to fight him normally, now you know. It's basically the same thing as cheesing him. But with both bells of Awakening rung, we can move on to the second half of the game, and finally grab a new weapon. In Sen's Fortress, if you jump off the top of the stairs above Siegmeyer, you'll actually find a unique, hidden weapon that can only be acquired once per run, the Shodel. A curved sword in the most literal sense of the words, it has almost the same exact moveset as the other two weapons we have. The only difference is the strong attacks. They're a bit slower and more deliberate, and that's because these attacks can actually go around shields. So if you've been lamenting every fight against shielded enemies, congratulations, shields no longer matter to you. The only problem is that this is the worst curved sword we've picked up so far. It's just as heavy as the falchion, has worse durability, and has worse damage due to the fact that it has C scaling with dexterity instead of B. Bit of a bummer, honestly. I was really hoping for something worth using. But I've just been running around shielded enemies, or learning out riposts, so the Shodel is kinda garbo. Unless you're using it to surprise your enemy in PvP. Probably great for that, actually. But with the Iron Golem cut down at the ankles, we can move on to Anor Londo, where our next weapon waits for us. But unlike the other weapons we've collected so far, this one requires some grinding on our part, which means it's time to break out the covetous Gold Serpent Ring, pop humanities until we've got 10 in our inventory, then get to farming. Today's target? Painting Guardians. With only a 2% drop rate chance, this might take a minute. Thankfully, there's plenty of Guardians to farm in this area, and the bonfire isn't too far away, which means it's only a matter of time before we find our prize, the Painting Guardian Sword. This weapon is an odd one. It has low durability and lower base damage than the other swords we own, but it's got two very good things going for it, A dexterity scaling and bleed damage. The scaling alone makes it slightly stronger than our falchion at 40 dexterity, and the bleed damage is just icing on the cake. The only problem is its reach. Thing might as well be a butter knife in comparison to its brothers. Much like the Shodel, the only change in this weapon's moveset is its strong attacks. Both its one-handed and two-handed movesets are very fluid combos, and both of them make me actually want to consider the Lord of the Dance run that multiple comments joked about when I got Priscilla's dagger all those videos ago. But enough of my dreams of dancing my way to victory. Let's see how the Painting Guardian Sword performs in action. And the answer is, not bad. The short reach is somewhat problematic, but if you're willing to snuggle up to your favorite Dragon Slayer and have a few points put into endurance, you can just R1 your way to victory. Utilizing the two-hand attack speed, you've got plenty of room to squeeze in hits between enemy attacks. And in case that wasn't enough, you've also got the fact that every attack is applying bleed. Basically the Lordran equivalent of running at your enemy with a weed whacker. Again, I regret the fact that I constantly forget about resins or buffs. This thing is an absolute powerhouse. But with Ornstein and Smo out of the way, what do you say we get a prize for our efforts? If you have a plus 10 curved sword, you can take Qualag's soul to the giant blacksmith. And, if you ask him nicely, he'll turn it into Qualag's Fury Sword. This weapon is a crowd favorite, and understandably so. The damage is a little wonky, what with the physical damage being quite a bit lower than every other weapon we have, but the fire damage is well worth your time, considering a good chunk of enemies in the last half of the game don't have good fire resistance. Combine that with good scaling, incredible durability, and a weight that is easy enough to accommodate for, and you've got a hell of a weapon. And that's without mentioning several bonus factors that are worth considering. The first of which is its size, and the second being its looks. Between the bug-like blade and the flame effect, this weapon is the very definition of stylish. As far as moveset goes, it's the same as the rest, with a slower, heavier swipe for its strong attacks, which means once again we don't have to retrain our brains. A bit boring, but I guess there's no reason to fix what isn't broken. And besides, adding the flame effect to every attack really does spice up the moves. And there's one more thing I forgot to mention. It gets additional damage if you have soft humanity. As you can see from this chart, your physical and fire damage both increase as your soft humanity increases, up to a cap of 10. It's not crazy numbers, but an additional 81 damage is nothing to scoff at when your attacks come out as fast as they do. But don't take my word for it. I've heard rumor that the undead love fire. So let's go see if we can't improve their day. Pinwheel, my brother, I heard you've been trying to resurrect your family. Have you tried the fire born from chaos? Oh wait, he's dead. Nito, my good man, I've heard you've been sitting in your cave watching the world burn. Can I interest you in the fire born from chaos? Oh wait, I'm dead. Joking aside, the Fury Sword is a great weapon. It's fast, it's stylish, and the reach is great at keeping enemies at bay or for killing multiple mobs with a single swing. The only downside of the weapon is that it can't be buffed. Unlike the other weapons we've acquired up to this point, it's a boss weapon, which not only means getting Demon Titanite to upgrade it, but also that you can't apply resins or spell buffs to it. Not that it needs it, but sometimes you just want to melt something with a single flurry of attacks, you know? Oh, fun fact. If you couldn't be bothered to dive into Blighttown for the falchion, there's a free falchion here in the Duke's Archives. It's enchanted, which means it scales with intelligence rather than dexterity, but you can always take it to a blacksmith and have it downgraded to a +10 falchion if you want something that fits your build better. But if you're wanting a completely different weapon, and not just a rehash of something we already have, you'll have to go a little further to get the last few curved swords of the game. Let me just clean up a few side bosses real quick, and I do mean real quick, and then we can get to grinding again. Because wouldn't you know it, the next weapon we're after is once again only obtainable from an enemy drop. And it's somehow even worse than last time. At a whopping 1% drop chance, we now get the immense pleasure of farming the ghosts in New Londo. What are we looking for? Why, one of the worst curved swords in the game, of course. The Jagged Ghost Blade. This thing is just an insult to anyone collecting curved swords. Not only does it require Twinkling Titanite to upgrade, which means it can't be buffed by resins, but it also scales with strength, if you can even call that scaling. In the interest of fairness, it does have bleed, and Twinkling Titanite weapons are some of the earliest weapons you can max out, but it's still a pretty heavy letdown. As per usual, the only moveset change is its strong attacks, which turn the flowing dexterous combo into a violent stab. Jesus, calm down, Lemon. It's gonna be okay, buddy. Just put the knife down. Well, that was an annoying waste of time. At least we've still got one more weapon to find. Otherwise, this would have left a sour taste in my mouth. Thank you, Dark Souls. Anyway, we've got a bit of a trek to the final weapon, so let's get pushing, shall we? I carved my way through Lost Izalith with my Painting Guardian swords, bleeding and slashing everything in sight, then opted to switch to my tried and true falchion for the Centipede Demon for better reach, which turned out to be the right choice and got me the orange charred ring early. Does this weapon set feel overpowered to anyone else? No? Just me? Alright then. That is one thing I always worry about when making these videos. I've been challenge running Dark Souls 1 for so long that I always feel like I have a skewed idea of what good damage is. Like, the Painting Guardian sword here is definitely doing good damage, right? I'm not just biased because the boss health bar is visibly moving. Just making sure. In any case, we've officially killed every boss in the base game, so now it's time to make our way through the DLC. And the last barrier to our final weapon is Artorias. This fight is actually a bit of a challenge. I tried multiple swords to see which would be the best against him, but all of them do pretty pitiful damage. Every weapon except for Quelaag's Fury Sword anyway. Artorias is currently buffed, and we're still doing decent damage. What's more, I think the Fury Sword is one of the few curved swords that can actually break him out of his buffing phase, so that's helpful. But if we're being honest, the biggest help here is the sword's reach. The Painting Guardian sword would be stronger if we buffed it with a resin, but that extra damage does us no good if the reach prevents us from hitting Artorias consistently. Finally, a boss with no easy solution. If you've been R1ing your way to victory this entire time, you might get a little uncomfortable here. But I promise, your patience and the reward are well worth it. If we return to Artorias' arena, his compatriot Kiran is paying her respects. And if we give her his soul, she happily parts with her weapons, a curved blade and a dagger. These weapons are both amazing, but we're only interested in one, the Gold Tracer. With A scaling and dexterity, lightweight, amazing durability, and the ability to bleed enemies, you've got one hell of a sword. Its length is about as long as the falchion, so that's not an issue, and it has a very cool after effect with every swing. Why do so many curved swords have cool visual effects on them? The one-handed strong attack is a flowing blade dance that does a great job of stacking damage and the bleed effect, and the two-handed strong attack does the job just as well, though it has more stabs than the one-handed version. And with our final blade in hand, it's time to wrap up this run. Let's get it done. With flowing golden slashes, we bring light to the abyss, and the inky blackness falls to ribbons, our blades singing in the eternal dark. The only remaining source of the abyss is the Black Dragon, Calamite, whose flames are as dark and empty as the void we've just climbed out of. It doesn't take long for my curved sword to prove that even the abyss can bleed. And with Calamite defeated, there's only one last obstacle in my way. No, not Priscilla. Her land is peaceful, its inhabitants kind. Our true target is Gwyn, Lord of Cinder and the source of this land's suffering. And we deliver the pain and suffering of his people in a way that can't be ignored. The Lord of Cinder. A false title. His skin burns just like everyone else's. And, with the fraudulent lord defeated, my blade's song reaches its crescendo, and its final note rings throughout Lordran. And there you go. Curved swords only in Dark Souls 1. Honestly, this feels like one of the stronger weapon classes we've covered so far. The weapon speed is fantastic, the damage is great, and the movesets are varied enough that they can handle any scenario. If you're looking for a quick but heavy-hitting weapon type, this is going to be your bread and butter. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you learned something new today, and if you didn't, hopefully my babbling gave you some amount of dopamine that'll help you get through whatever you're working on. And, as always, take care of yourselves, be good to one another, and I'll see you all again soon.